Thanks, Seth. I am super excited for our next conversation. I need to remind you, though, we'll take questions at the end, so write those down as we're going through this. Please join me in welcoming Michael Colgrove, the Executive Director of Energy Trust of Oregon. Michael, will you give us a brief introduction to you and your company?
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Energy Trust of Oregon is, we're kind of a unique model. There's only a few states in the nation that operate efficiency programs the way that Oregon does. We're actually an independent nonprofit that was created in 2002 following state legislation that established Oregon's public purpose charge, which funds our energy efficiency programs here. Energy Trust of Oregon offers cash incentives. We offer technical assistance, services, and connections to a network of local contractors, probably like many of the people who are attending the conference today do. And all of that, of course, is to help utility customers use less energy and to generate renewable power. If we want to go to the next slide, you can see a little bit about how Energy Trust service territory looks. We actually serve residential, commercial, and industrial customers, customers of Oregon's 5 investor-owned utilities in all parts of the state. You can see from the map here, though, that it's not contiguous parts of the state. We serve about 1.8 million electric and natural gas utility customers in Oregon. That's about 74% of Oregon's electric customers and about 99% of Oregon's natural gas customers. We also actually serve an additional 86,000 natural gas customers in Washington state. And since 2002, Energy Trust, we've invested $2.2 billion to help participants save $4.6 billion on the energy bills, which over the life of those measures, we expect to add up to about $8.9 billion. We've added about $9.5 billion to the local economy since 2002, and that includes $3 billion in wages, $503 million in small business income, and 76,000 full-time jobs lasting more than a year. We've also worked to keep 36.2 million tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which is equal to removing about 7 million cars from Oregon's roads every year. So that's a little bit about who we are.
Wow, that is super impressive. What an impact that you've made, in Oregon. Tell me a little bit about your story in joining Energy Trust of Oregon.
Well, I came to Oregon and to Energy Trust of Oregon just over 5 years ago now. My 5-year anniversary was in August. I came here actually from the East Coast. I spent about 15 years working at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, or NYSERDA. There I ran multifamily programs for NYSERDA in New York City and eventually became the director of NYSERDA's New York City office. I actually worked with a gentleman back in New York who, for various reasons, decided to relocate out here to the West Coast. And I kind of helped connect him to Energy Trust when he moved out here. He's a great guy. He worked in the residential programs, really knew his stuff. And fortunately, Energy Trust hired him. And when my predecessor, Margie Harris, the founding executive director of Energy Trust of Oregon, retired or announced retirement, this gentleman, Mark Wyman is his name, he kind of pinged me and was like, there's an opportunity out here if you're interested. I had no plans on leaving NYSERDA. We were doing really interesting things out there on the East Coast. But of course, I knew about the reputation of Energy Trust and was really excited about the opportunity. Never been to Portland. So my husband and I took a trip out here for my first interview, fell in love with the place. And fortunately, they ended up selecting me in the interview process. So we moved out in 2016.
Wow, that is so neat.
Back. Yeah.
From one coast to the other coast. That's
and it
neat.
is true what they say, Rich. The coasts are very different.
They are. Hey, what are the hot buttons for Energy Trust of Oregon today?
Well, I think they're probably the same as many people are experiencing right now. Here in the Northwest and Oregon in particular, Energy Trust has really helped to transform the market for a lot of our lower cost energy savings measures like LED light bulbs, low flow water saving devices, things like that. And as we all know, as those very low cost measures are exiting our portfolio, what's left are the higher cost efficient technologies. And that starts to put pressure on some of our cost effectiveness metrics and levelized costs. So we really have to think about the measure mix, the portfolio that we're supporting, and in many ways get more creative. That reality is really requiring us to innovate and adapt faster than ever before. And of course, that's not the only thing. We're all in an extremely dynamic industry right now. Things are changing very quickly from day to day practically. And so we've really spent a lot of time at Energy Trust trying to become more flexible, more adaptable, and more nimble as an organization to be able to pivot and change and meet the new needs of our customers. One of the ways that we're really exploring doing that is to help try to make our funds go further by collaborating with new partners, partners who have not traditionally been part of the energy industry, to bring in additional sources of funding. It's funding that leverages, our existing ratepayer funding, our public purpose charge money, and there's, a variety of examples of that, areas that we've explored already, but there's a lot more work that we need to do. I think one of the biggest examples of sort of leveraging some of the non-energy benefits of the energy efficiency and renewable energy work we do, we've partnered with a local agricultural nonprofit on irrigation improvement here in the state of Oregon. And that partnership really helps projects that generate renewable energy. They also help to save water. They promote wildlife habitat, and they provide financial support to farmers and irrigation districts. And this is mostly in our rural parts of Oregon. There's really been high interest projects that have, these projects typically qualify for a variety of state and federal funds. In fact, I think from 2015 to 2020, Energy Trust, we've invested about $11 million in project development assistance and investments, but that has helped secure more than $167 million in federal, state, and private funds to help these irrigation districts modernize. There's a variety of other examples too. We work a lot with our local community action agencies, combining some of the federal and state low-income funding with our efficiency and renewable energy funding to really help serve more low-income customers and households. And that has also really helped us reach more rural customers, more low-income customers.
That's really interesting. You have a very diverse state because you got basically Portland and the surrounding areas, which is high density, and then you've got very rural areas.
Yeah.
So, kind of for the big city, for lack of a better term, what are some of the things that you guys are doing there in the cities? I know that I visited with some of the folks, a multifamily, brand new. I mentioned it on my introduction to this whole series of conversations that we're having, and I was just amazed at the technology that's being brought to the city.
Yeah. I mean, there's still plenty of opportunity in the urban centers for sure. I think one of the really interesting things, especially in Portland, Portland has a reputation of being a very progressive city. They recently adopted the Portland Clean Energy Fund to really help focus efficiency and renewable clean energy benefits generally in some of the more frontline communities, working explicitly with organizations of color that work with customers and communities of color, low income, elderly. And that new source of funding in the city of Portland, we've been working really closely with the city to understand how we can leverage with that, work with the nonprofits that are applying for that source of funding, and really help that be successful. And that wouldn't probably have happened if it weren't for the urban aspects of Portland and the progressive nature of it. It's been really valuable. Of course, we also have, in and around Portland, a variety of industries, and we have a really long relationship with some of our big employers, some of our big manufacturers, and they're really progressive in the work that they do in the new facilities that they're building, in the production lines, and modernizing that and making it as efficient as possible. So there's no lack of work in the urban centers, that's for sure.
If you think about the Energy Trust of Oregon, you think about the challenges that are, whether it be 1 year or 3 year out, what are some of the big challenges and opportunities that you see?
Well, I think, in addition to sort of figuring out how to bring some of that leveraged funding to the portfolio that I mentioned earlier, I think one of the really big challenges, and I don't think this is unique to us, it's certainly a consideration that has become more prominent on the West Coast, in the Northwest, and when I talk to my colleagues throughout the country, I think it's becoming a bigger issue, and that is around equity. In the way that we administer our programs. And when we start to really take a close look at who's participating in our programs, I think we really see, first of all, a historical, lack of representation by a number of customer segments. In our case, in Oregon, particularly low-income customers, our rural customers are underrepresented historically in our programs, and people of color are underrepresented in our programs historically. And there's a lot of opportunity there, and we need to do a lot of work to sort of reverse some of that underrepresentation, particularly because, those customers, those groups are the ones that can really experience some of the highest energy burden, and have the most to benefit from energy efficiency and renewable energy.
Yeah, I know that, when we've talked before, we had the opportunity to meet in Portland just before they closed it back down again. Like I said, I like to be out there in the field. And it was just really interesting to me, your passion around that area of the equity and some of the things that you were doing. And also that, as I travel across the country, it was a theme that I'm hearing. Everybody is trying to figure out how they can handle this, the equity aspect of this, and then the low income piece. And they know that, hey, things maybe not are equal. And they all are trying to figure out how we can, better that. So that's really interesting. So, if you think ahead of the Energy Trust of Oregon, what do you see ahead for the trust?
Well, I think, staying on that line of equity, which was actually one of the big reasons that really attracted me to apply to this position and to come out to Oregon and to join the Energy Trust family. My predecessor, a year or two before I got here, really set our organization on that path, worked with our board of directors to really recognize the gap in equity. And this is, this is not an exercise that has an end date to it. This is, what everybody says. This is a journey, and it's something that we constantly have to work and strive towards. Ultimately, it really boils down to the fact that we have an obligation to serve all of our customers, right? They all pay into the funds that we administer. But it's not enough for us to just say, hey, there's a program out there, anybody can participate in it. It doesn't work that way. And I think the numbers are bearing that out. You have to really design and deliver programs that are meaningful to a diversity of customers, really recognizing the different barriers that all of our customers, experience when they're trying to potentially benefit from clean energy solutions. And like I said earlier, these are communities that are really on the front line of climate change. I know many parts of our country are really now experiencing the significant impacts of climate change. Oregon is definitely no exception to that. from floods to severe ice storms to our wildfires. And that's just in the last 2 years. We really are, the impacts of climate change are here.
Yeah.
I think as the latest UN report showed, we can maybe now mitigate the worst impacts, but we are going to experience some of the really bad impacts. And unfortunately, those impacts hit those frontline communities the hardest. You were fortunate. I think when you came out right in that mid spot between our June heat wave and our August heat wave. And heat waves, we don't have a heat wave in Portland. I mean, that's one of the things about our climate. It's really temperate, it's beautiful. Our summers are gorgeous. And we had 3 days in a row where we broke records, well over 114 to 116. That is unheard of. And unfortunately, we lost over 100 people in the city and around the city and state as a result of that heat wave. And 1 in 5 of those people, they lived in mobile home parks. They were the people who were least able to, get through 3 or 4 days of high temperatures like that. When you look at our wildfires, where our wildfires occur, they're hitting our rural parts of the state the most, right? And even if a rural community is not impacted directly by the fire, the air quality issues that people in our rural communities are experiencing is so severe. We have outreach managers in the southern part of the state and out in the eastern part of our state, and there was a recording of air quality that our rural outreach manager had never seen, didn't even know it could get that high, that bad.
Wow.
So I think all of that, we have that's going to be a lot of the work that we have to focus on over the next number of years. We're really, I think, in many ways fortunate, all of us in this industry. The work that we do has so many benefits beyond reducing utility bills, right? Or helping the utilities meet load. There's just so many non-energy benefits, and we work with solutions that can help communities become more resilient, help create jobs and promote economic development, and most importantly, help improve the quality and health of our customers' lives. So that for us is definitely the future, is really recognizing more, these additional benefits, the other things that our work can do and can support, and the issues they can address. So that's what we're focused on.
Well, that's great. I'm going to go to some live Q&A because I can't hog the whole conversation, and I would, let me tell you. One of the questions that we had that came in from our audience was, how does your team learn about the community's barriers to participating in energy efficiency programs?
That's a great question, and actually illustrates one of the very first major errors I made when I became an executive director here. Our organization, like many, full of engineers, we're full of, program managers. We're very data driven, very focused that way. And that's kind of how we started this process off. And one of my board members, who is a member of a local Native American tribe here in the area, kind of put a pause on that and was like, you don't start this work by looking at data and setting goals and creating objectives and thinking you're going to go out and meet them. This work is relational. You have to build the relationships. And the answer to the question is whether there's a variety of ways to do it, but ultimately you have to figure out what organizations are you not working with. What organizations are trusted by the communities you're not currently serving effectively? What organizations do you need to reach out to and start to build that relationship with? And relationship building is just that, right? It's introducing yourself. It's saying, hey, I know we haven't worked in the past. It's recognizing your shortcomings. And that has also been really hard. I think it's hard for a lot of people, but it's hard to admit that you haven't done very well in certain areas in the past. And until I think we can really start to admit to ourselves and then admit to others and be open to some criticism, that's the only way for us to learn and to grow and to build the trust that's necessary with these communities and these customers to start becoming an effective partner with them. But it all starts with relationships.
You know, that's really interesting, talking about the relationships with people and the relationships with data, that you don't get either one of them out of sync. You need them both.
Sure.
But it comes down to people in the end of the day.
Yep.
Another question we got, does the Energy Trust of Oregon host any events to learn from the community where they pull them together, or do you do anything in that area?
We do, actually. One of the first things that we realized we needed to do was hire somebody with a little more expertise in community engagement and community relationships. And so at the beginning of, I guess it was at the end of 2019, we hired our first diversity, equity, and inclusion lead. And he really came on. His job is kind of an internal consultant to the organization. He's there to take a look at our processes, our systems, the way our programs are designed and run, and to help connect us to people. Energy Trust is always, we've always employed the same sort of tactics. I think that a lot of organizations do: focus groups. We do voice of customer interviews with targeted customer groups. But this past summer, actually, mostly through the month of July, our DEI lead, with the support of our outreach managers and others, organized a series of what we called community summits. And they were really, they targeted residential customers or residential focused advocates. We had one for tribes and tribal members. We had another one for small business owners and minority and women owned businesses, and another for commercial and industrial customers. And they were really, it was a little tough for us because we really didn't go in with an agenda. We didn't go in with specific questions that we wanted asked. We went in, we introduced ourselves a little bit, but the whole point of those summits was for us to listen and not talk, not defend ourselves, not promote ourselves and our successes. And so, yes, we did that. And that has actually segued now into, we did start by creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion operations plan that set out a variety of changes and goals within 10 sort of aspects of our organization. We are now moving, I say evolving, into developing our next plan for next year that's going to be far more focused on community engagement. We're really learning a lot about how to do community engagement, what it means, and how to move from that sort of just going out and informing customers of the programs you have available to really going out and co-creating those programs with your customers.
Interesting. Well, that is fascinating. Being able to take that information or that data and then actually do something about it. Now, do you build a plan, a DEI plan, that's a 3-year plan or a 1-year plan, and review and adjust? How are you guys looking at that?
Yeah, it's kind of trial and error. Our first plan was a 2-year plan. Like I said, was really more goal oriented, which I think in hindsight was really important for our organization to really just give us the impetus to move off of where we were, right? Like I said, we're very data oriented, goal driven. So taking that first approach was helpful in just getting over the inertia of where we had been, creating those goals, making them challenging. But what it really did was create the framework and begin to create the mentality that really allowed us to better explore and understand the needs of our customers. And that is what has evolved now. And so we're in kind of a bridge plan year in 2021. It's just a 1-year plan. But I don't know that there's necessarily an answer right now to your question. We're developing this plan. We know it'll be for 2022. It will probably go beyond that. And what I suspect is that the process of community engagement will start to take over the more sort of deliberate process of goal setting. And it'll probably be an ongoing plan, if you will. This community engagement's not a one-time thing, right? You don't go out and talk to, representatives from a specific community and then say you're done. Feedback loops have to be built in. I think people are really, even people who aren't experts in energy efficiency or renewable energy, we're still running programs that are affecting their lives, and they're definitely interested in that. And there is a lot of interest. You will always find people willing to provide input and feedback. Some of it very positive and some of it not, and both of it's really valuable. And so I don't know if there will be an end date on the next plan, because what we need to do is continuous community engagement, providing feedback loops, and really constantly listening and adapting to what we hear.
We just got a question in, and it says, energy trust work in this area is very inspiring. We've talked about industry, hot topics, but what really inspires you personally about the future of our industry and how we're positively impacting communities?
I have to say, I don't know, I've been now in this industry just over 20 years probably. I know I'm not an elder necessarily in the industry, but definitely have been around the block a few times. And I think what really inspires me right now is I feel like we're really on the cusp of, and I don't mean to demean the way we've done things in the past, but I know how I designed my programs in the early days. And a lot of that was done with my colleagues, our contractors in a room, thinking about what we needed. Sure, we did market research and we talked to customers, and we incorporated that into our design. And of course, we tried to improve based on feedback from our customers and things like that. But I think what really inspires me is this concept of really putting the community and the customer in the driver's seat when it comes to us thinking about our programs. We're always going to have to operate within parameters, whether they're cost effectiveness parameters or budgets or whatever requirements our funding has to follow. But I think our new job is to figure out how to be as creative as possible to hear what our customers really need and to do what we can within our parameters to support that. One of the things, if I could just a second longer, one of the things that came out of the community summits, a residential one in particular, we have a huge affordable housing problem in the state of Oregon, which is not unique to our state. I know many parts of the country are facing affordable housing crises. And in the past, we've always sort of said, yes, we understand our customers' problem. That's a big issue our customers face, finding affordable housing. But we're not a housing agency. So what can we, we're not a housing developer. How can we support that? And I think the time has come for energy organizations like ours to stop saying that and to really recognize that I think our job as an organization is to help our customers overcome the barriers preventing them from adopting clean energy solutions. Well, if your barrier is that you can't afford your own home, what can we do to help you? We're going to have to start rethinking how we can support our customers' needs, because you can't put in an efficient appliance if you don't own your home, right? So we can't do our job until our customers' needs are really satisfied and met. And I think we all as an industry, have to start rethinking that. That's what inspires me, is to really, really work more directly in partnership with our customers and the communities we're trying to serve.
Yeah, there's a broadening set of challenges, and that I think kind of brings out hopefully the best and the innovation in everyone. What are you thinking about? You have partners, you have people that work for you in developing these programs. What are the kind of the directions that you'd be putting, like on a CLEAResult, for example? Like, we need you to do this to help us achieve our mission.
Yeah, well, one of the strong benefits of the model that many program administrators have adopted by using organizations like CLEAResult as program implementers is that you come to the table with experience from across the country, right? You see how other places are doing it. I think in some cases you're one of the greatest sources of innovation, because you see when some other organization tries it this way, and you can learn from that, and you can bring that to your other programs that you manage and implement. Excuse me. And that, I think, is what we at Energy Trust are trying to do more with organizations like yours, is continuously challenge you to be innovative, to say the model that has worked in the past is not the model that's going to work tomorrow. What can we do? What ideas can you bring to the table that will move us into this new era, that will help us better address the challenges that we and our customers are facing? So thinking about, how can you engage communities better? How can you bring communities in as partners? Last year, we released an RFP for our commercial programs, and it was one of the first times we put in a requirement to subcontract a certain amount of the total delivery cost of the commercial program to diverse firms within org to work on implementing that or delivering that program. And I think the solutions, the ideas that were proposed were just fantastic. And what we're really seeing now are more partnerships, more teaming. Yeah, CLEAResult may be the prime contractor on it, but I think you're really understanding that in order to reach these groups that we haven't served, we have to bring more people in, and building those partnerships within your own team and then proposing to RFPs like ours or solicitations like ours is really what needs to be done. And I've really been very happy with yours and other organizations stepping up to that challenge, and not being territorial about it or not being defensive about it, and really recognizing we have to be more inclusive. And that means everywhere, right? In our contracts, in the people who help design our program, everything. We have to be more inclusive. We have to hear more voices. The challenges in front of us, Rich, are way too big for any one organization to solve. We have got to start really just bringing in more ideas, because I don't know that the ideas that just a few of us can generate are going to be sufficient.
It's interesting. When you and I talked before, we talked about some of the numbers and the percentage that was so low for this, and that, at some point you just got to take a stand and say, look, this is what we're going to do. It's the right thing to do, and to think to address some of the equity issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing too is, you can't be afraid to start. First of all, you can't be afraid to recognize where you are. Your numbers may not look great, but you got to know where you are. And I think that's really important for all of us. In order to do that and to acknowledge it and to own it, is one of the first steps then in being able to say, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try to bring in as many people as I can, experts in the area who can help, and talk to others who have tried it. You don't do this in a vacuum. That's really important, right? It's relational. So you need to build the relationships first and then bring them in. But just as a quick example, one of our goals we have a very white organization. Energy Trust is a very white organization. And we recognized that. And what that really meant too was that we weren't reflecting the communities we were trying to serve. We didn't look like the people who weren't participating in our programs. So it's no surprise they weren't participating with us. So our HR department really set out, we're trying to really focus on how do we craft our postings and our position announcements? Where are we promoting our postings and our position announcements? And then most importantly, what are we doing for retention when we do hire, people of color? I think in 2020, 29%, I believe, of our new staff identified as people of color, and so far in 2021, 71% have. Wow. And so, I know we're only halfway through the year, but it's just a testament, I think. And I don't mean to say that to brag, because we have so much more work to do. But I do use it as an example to show that just start doing some things and you will probably see changes, because if you keep doing things the way you've done them, you can't expect to move forward.
Yeah, those are some amazing changes that you brought, Michael. One of the things we've talked a lot about, kind of the residential piece. What's happening on the commercial side? If you think about, the big commercial customers.
Yeah. Well, our big commercial customers are doing pretty well. The pandemic, of course, has hit industries unevenly in Oregon the same way it has across the country. But those larger industrial customers that have historically and traditionally participated with us are continuing to do it. Especially those who have been less impacted by the pandemic. What we're really looking at right now is the smaller industrial and commercial customers. It may sound odd to some people in the audience. We define industrial slightly different. We don't define it by size or by load. We just define it as a sector based on process, like if you're producing something. So we have small industrial customers in the state of Oregon as well. And we have, certainly small commercial, like we all do. But our focus has really been over the last couple of years, how do we better serve those customers with our programs? I think, we all know you get the biggest bang for your buck with the largest, industrial facilities. Those produce the cheapest energy savings, typically have a lot of savings potential, usually, and tend to be good repeat customers because they always have another project to do. That's probably why we've served so many of them in the past, is because they are sort of easier to work with. The real challenge is to understand, again, it's just understanding the needs of our small business owners. What are you facing as a small business owner? What challenges do you have? How can energy efficiency help you meet those challenges? Yes, maybe efficiency or energy consumption isn't the biggest part of your bill or your cost of operation. How else can efficiency support your operation, support your employee productivity, health and well-being, image in the community, whatever it may be? And so that has been a significant focus of our commercial and industrial programs, especially those business owners that are in our more rural parts of the state. Our programs have not really effectively reached them over our past. And so we're really thinking about how can we better serve them.
Interesting. If you think about, you've got a full portfolio of offering across a multitude of customers, and literally from someone's home up to a large corporate business. How do you actually segment that out from a business perspective?
Well, I don't know that we necessarily do anything terribly different than other program administrators do. I will say, we use the same I know not everybody uses this approach, but we, divide our, customers into sectors. And so, yes, we've got our residential team, and we've got our commercial team, and our industrial and agricultural team, and our renewables team. And of course, we work with program implementers like you to bring the specific skill sets that are necessary. And yeah, each of our sector groups uses slightly different tools and approaches to reach the sectors that they reach. But I think what we're also noticing now, one of the things we're actually actively exploring right now is the cross-sector sort of concerns and needs. And that's really produced some interesting thinking in the way that we're structured as an organization, the way that we approach our business. One example, for instance, is in the state of Oregon, we're fortunate enough to have really supportive utility partners who work very closely with us on our program design and implementation. And we've been doing what we call targeted load management, really thinking about how efficiency, specifically efficiency that meets certain time of day needs or certain locational needs for the utilities grid, to perhaps help them defer a transmission or distribution upgrade. And we've been piloting some efforts in various communities around the state to really target efficiency efforts in those communities to see whether it is, to what level it's capable of deferring those types of investments from the utilities. And what we're really learning is, in order to do that, in order to help the utility meet that grid management need, we have to think cross-sectorally, right? We have to think about all the customers in that community as a group, as a unit, because we're trying to get all of them to adopt certain types of measures. And that's their commercial, their industrial, their residential customers.
That's quite a change. That's quite a change.
It is. And I'm not saying we have this solved yet. But we are actively exploring it right now. And it's really exciting. I've always found some of the most interesting, challenging, and intriguing opportunities are in the cracks of the systems that we've built, right? It's where things connect that you haven't maybe seen those connections in the past. And that's usually where a lot of opportunities still lie. So I'm really excited about this exploration internally.
Well, that is really neat. That's, kind of fascinating when you start thinking about that, because a lot of times when I go out, I'm talking either to the residential group or the CNI group and they're very distinct, but you guys are starting to bring those together. And what caused you to do that? Was it, did you have data that said, hey, there's a correlation, or you're trying to look at a life cycle stream and a cause and effect, or what kind of brought you to the point that says, hey, there's something big here between these sectors and segments?
Like most things, it was our customers. Our customers started demonstrating and requesting and expressing needs that didn't neatly fit within a lot of people refer to them as silos, or sectors of our organization. And, we're not saying it's everywhere, but certainly you've got residential homeowners who are interested in that heat pump and a solar panel. Why do they have to go through two programs and deal with two trade allies and two of everything to get that? They need one solution. They're looking for a solution for their home. How can we be more responsive to our customers' needs that way? That's one example of sort of what drove some of this. Another example is, in addition to the targeted load management that I mentioned, which was really, our utility partners coming to us and saying, hey, we have this need. How can efficiency and renewables help us with that? But the other example has really been the increased demand or just increased requests for support from various communities, typically municipalities, our towns and cities across the state, who are looking to do carbon reduction plans or energy management plans, really thinking about their collective, whether it's carbon contribution or energy consumption at the city or town level. And as more customers started coming to us, not just with sort of, we've always worked with sort of individual entities within government, right? Like so-and-so wants to retrofit their city hall building, or there's a wastewater treatment facility that could use some upgrades. That we've always done at the project level. But now we're really seeing far more interest at the community level to really think about more holistic solutions, solutions that do cross those sectors. And that's really driven some of our thinking too.
That's really interesting. We had a couple lightning sessions yesterday that talked, and I was amazed that we had students in a school who were actually driving the school administration to do energy efficiency programs. And I'm sure you probably, especially in Oregon, I'm sure you probably see some of that. And that's, I kind of look at that from the perspective of that's when when something's really got traction, because it's starting at the grassroots, it's starting in the communities, kind of, and it takes a life of its own from there.
Yeah, which is again why it's so important to build those relationships within your communities now, so that you're aware of these changing dynamics, the changing needs of your customers. It's a very sometimes disheartening thing to wake up and realize that the programs you've been offering for the last 10, 12, 15 years are not what your customers need right now. And to learn that in hindsight is even more disheartening. It's a lot nicer. It's a lot nicer when you're actually on the ground with them and understand, as things are changing, why they're changing and what those new needs are. And so that community engagement aspect of our work is just so critical. And I know me personally in my professional career, that has not been something I've focused on as much. And now I've made it a point as part of my own professional development to better understand community engagement, to better understand what that means, what the frameworks look like, what the prevailing thinking is, and what the goals of community engagement really should be.
Well, Michael, I would love to thank you for the amount of time that you spent with us today, and the insights are real and they're genuine. And, I can tell you from coming outside in, you are doing great things. You and the trust are doing great things, and you're making a difference. And, I think at the end of the day, that's what we're all here about, is to make energy efficiency differences and make, lives better for the communities that we serve.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
I'd like to thank you once again for joining us today.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. I appreciate the invitation.